Welcome back to part 2 of my little chat with Amy Williams, formerly known as Juror 864 of the Alex Murdaugh murder trial, along with her co-author, Shayna Hirsch. We're here to talk about their upcoming book, about to be released in a little over a week, and also some of her memories from the trial. So sit back, relax, and welcome to our little chat. This is Cassidy O'Connell with the other 55%, because we don't know the half of it. Welcome. Let's talk about Paw Paw, Mags, and Roro. I am such a no shenanigans person. When I was watching the trial from home, if I had had a gun, I probably would have shot my TV. Because my shenanigans meter was just way off the charts. It was annoying to me because to me, it felt like a ploy, a badly thought out and badly executed ploy. How did you feel about that?
I mean, the nicknames was just rolling and rolling, and I was like, did he really call them this? It was every time he turned around, he had a nickname for somebody, and I was like, wow. I guess maybe they did. And they probably did, maybe, but it was just crazy.
I think it was very sus too that it was like Creighton brought it up, like you never referred to him. We've watched hours and hours of interrogation and you never called him Pawpaw.
Yeah.
That was the thing in all the other videos and the investigations, all of those things. He never called them that. And then all of a sudden it was like every single time, Pawpaw,
Yeah.
I just
maddening.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little more easily irritated than you are, Amy.
Well, his acting skills were not very good. He was trying to, he thought that he was the smartest person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he thought that he committed the perfect, crime, the perfect murders. And he thought he could get away with it. He thought he had everybody snowed. And so he kept trying to build on the tangled web that he had weaved, but
exactly,
it wasn't working because it was falling apart. And so it wasn't making any sense anymore. And it was just getting out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody says these days, the math ain't mathin', and Amy's like, the timeline ain't timing.
The timeline is not. It's not.
Yeah.
And that was the main thing. When of course the video placed him at the scene. There's no doubt he was there. So when he got on the stand and he admitted that he lied, I was like, wow, are you serious? Really? And so then he starts talking. But I thought it was really strange when they asked him, why did he lie? And he said, oh, what a tangled web we weave. I was like, what? That's
not an answer.
Come up with what? And I know after that he did say, it was because of his distrust for the police, and he thought that they don't.
And then the opioids and
and all of that stuff. But then he
the whole kitchen sink.
Yes,
because the kitchen sink
makes sense of the time. Nothing he said made sense in nothing. So everything that he said before was just went out the window. There was no need to see when we went to Moselle whether you could see down to the kennels, because he wasn't taking a nap and he wasn't in the house, and whether he could hear any shots because he was there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was making no sense whatsoever. It just went downhill from there, and I was like,
yeah. From books that I've read since then and my own looking into things, I really think that I feel like he tried to form his character after his grandpa Buster.
Mm-hmm.
And his grandpa Buster, I've been doing a series about that called Murdaugh Mafia.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time period, at Buster's time period, it's before everybody had TVs. There wasn't a whole lot to do. The newspapers wrote about absolutely everything. So there is so much material available just in the newspapers. Because one thing I've noticed, there's a lot of different books being written, And when you go by rumor, you read one thing in one book and another in another book, and it just depends on who you're talking to. And some of it I feel like is just stories. So I didn't want to go by that. So my series is taken entirely from the newspapers. And Buster's time period, there's so much written about him because he really was a main guy. But this guy got away with huge stuff. He stole from his clients.
Yeah.
He fathered an illegitimate child. He wasn't paying his taxes. And then he was part of the big whiskey bootlegging thing.
Wow.
And then my next story, it's about selling babies, illegal adoptions.
Oh my goodness.
And every time this man squeaked right by, even when others around him were put in prison, he always found a way out of it. And I feel like Alex kind of envisioned himself a little bit like Buster, but Buster was in a different time period.
Right.
And Buster actually, I mean, not through any good way, but he had a lot of power. And he didn't mind to misuse the power. Alex didn't really have any. But I think in his mind he grew up hearing legends of his grandfather and thought that he could be invincible like Buster was.
Yeah.
You
Wanted
know?
that more. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of my really good friends grew up in Hampton, and I mean, Wayne was like long before any of this happened.
Mhm.
You know, Wayne was telling me all these stories. I mean, he told me the story about the waving to the train conductor thing about 20 years ago.
Wow.
You know, and it's crazy.
It really is. It's hard to believe that all of it is true because it's like some, you know, folklore or some novel written a long time ago. Like you can't believe this stuff really and truly happened. It's crazy. But yeah, I think that's why he didn't have good answers. You know, you said like that's the best he could do. I don't think he was used to answering for anything. So he
Right.
didn't even know how to begin
Right.
to explain or defend, you know. He
Yeah.
thought he was just going to go on getting away with it like he always had.
Mhm.
You mentioned Moselle. Let's talk about that trip to Moselle. I've actually driven past it, and I counted the time from the first gate that's down there by the kennels to the next gate. You know, driving slow, just to see, like in a golf cart, how long that would take. You know, is it really so long, so far? You know, and it was surprisingly fast, I thought, and especially if you're in a frenzy, you can do things really fast.
Yes.
So, you know, what stands out the most in your memory of being at Moselle?
Well, the thing that stood out most to me was I thought, just looking at the pictures, it looked like Maggie and Paul were further away from each other. And actually, they were closer than I actually thought, or, you know, from the pictures. And it was like kind of breathtaking because it was like, wow. I mean, she was heading towards him. I mean, what? It was just
She was running through her baby.
Yeah. And the feed room was much smaller than I thought from the pictures, which seemed odd. I mean, I guess it should look the same, but it just didn't, because once you actually walked in and it was like, you can't fit. I mean, two people can't stand side by side in this thing, or, you know, you have to be really small, or, you know, something like that. But it was, and I mean, and if you think about it, when we were there wasn't anything in the feed room. So there was, you know, there was things in the feed room at that time. So that made it smaller, of course.
Right.
But I noticed too that you had to be careful walking in and walking out of there, because that threshold at the door was so high.
Oh, really?
You could trip. So you need to pay attention. You know, you had to pay attention to that. But, and we walked. I remember that me and I don't know if it was just a couple other jurors. I don't know how many, but I know there was one that was walking actually with me. We followed the judge. We walked from the kennels to the house, and it wasn't really that long of a walk. So I can't imagine if you're on a golf cart, that's it.
Right.
So
yeah. I remember Valerie said that too when because she went on that same trip with you guys.
Yes. Mhm.
And she counted it was like 12 steps away
Yeah.
is the distance between Maggie and Paul.
Yeah, because I watched that right after when the video premiered that or was released about the juror visit.
Mhm.
I remember watching her walk it and then say something like 12 steps. I was just like,
Yeah, because it did look far. On camera, it looks far.
Yeah.
It looks far in video, and it just looks further. It does, and it wasn't that far, and
Wow.
it kind of sunk my heart a little bit.
Yeah, because she was so close when it all happened.
Mm-hmm. So she was definitely heading towards him. I'm assuming, and
Yeah, she would have seen maybe not the first shot if she
right.
wasn't looking.
Yeah, I don't think she was there for the first shot, but maybe the second.
Wow. Well, you must have some bad images stuck in your head after all that.
Thankfully not. I had to pray a lot. I had my best friend, she moved to Charleston at the end of March that after the trial, but she used to live in Oklahoma. She did not watch the trial or anything, and she knew I was on the jury, but she didn't know anything else. But she prayed, and she said she would send me texts and say, "I'm praying," every morning or whatever. And she would said, "I'm praying for you in the jury." And then after the trial, I've had so many people say, "Oh, we were praying for you guys,"
Aww.
And so I'm thinking that's what was keeping us sane, sustaining us, and even after the autopsy pictures, I asked the Lord on my way home. I said, "Please let me be able to close my eyes tonight and not see those pictures, please."
Mm-hmm.
So that was one reason why when I came home, if there was something I could do, I would get online for work and see if there was something. And most of the time there was that I could do, it would help,
just to keep your mind busy.
Yes, and get things out of my head. And I actually slept well, did not I closed my eyes and everything was good. So I don't really have any nightmares or anything, but it was just a horrible thing. It really was.
Yeah.
I met a juror at CrimeCon who wrote a book because he was a juror on the Lori Vallow trial.
Oh, that was a rough one.
Yeah. And so I had seen a couple of interviews with Tom, and Amy and Tom and I were going to talk one night, and then he got busy. But in a number of his interviews, he kept saying like, "Oh yeah, they gave us all barf bags." When we were lined up, they're like, "You're gonna see autopsy photos," and they passed out. I'm sorry, whatever. I wasn't supposed to say barf bags. My sweet darling editor was like, let's go with something else. I don't remember other than puke bags.
Well, we didn't get that. So
yeah, and then and I thought it was interesting because another thing that Tom said was that since it was such a rough trial and it was centered around small children, that they were also offered like 6 therapy sessions if they needed to talk with somebody.
Oh,
so
wow.
I did some research and stuff about like how often that is offered, but it's just a total case by case, for lack of a better word, basis. And I guess maybe just the fact that it was such young children in the Lori Vallow case, maybe.
Right.
That's what made
in a completely different state too. So
yeah, that's what made it hard. But not being able to talk about it was painful.
I bet.
We couldn't talk about it with each other. And then we got home, and I live alone because my son had just went off to college, and my parents live a little ways down. And so, I'm home alone. And so I didn't really have anyone to talk to, but it was just, except for the Lord. It's the only person I had to talk to. I guess that's the best person to talk to. But yeah, it was excruciating not being able to. And people
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and everywhere you go, people are talking about it, and you're like, God Almighty. You don't say anything, and afterwards they're like, you didn't even. I had one cousin that told me, she said, "Oh, you kept that one close to the vest." I was like, I had to, and my mom was like, there were some people when they saw me on the Today Show, You didn't even tell me she was on the jury. My mom said I couldn't. I couldn't tell you. So, you know.
Well, you did good.
So it was hard. And of course, the main people at work knew because, you know, I wasn't there to work. And of course, my supervisor and the immediate team knew that I wasn't there, and the big bosses, and they knew why. But otherwise than that, there wasn't too many people that knew.
Mm. Well, you did really good.
It was hard.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine not being able to talk to somebody, especially like when there were just like autopsy photos and just like that shared experience of the horrors that y'all went through together, not being able to talk about it.
Yeah, just a process. Sometimes you need to talk, and they were going through it too, so you would feel like you would want to talk to them, but you can't.
Yes, you can't. This was something that prayer was needed, definitely, and you needed to talk to the Lord, and you wanted the right guidance, and you needed to help to be able to sit still and be quiet, and you know, being stuck in that room when you weren't in the courtroom, sitting in those hard chairs all day, and then
those chairs.
Yeah.
Those chairs, when I saw those chairs, because I toured the courthouse, and, you know, just like you said, Moselle is so much, you know, things were so much closer than it had looked in the pictures.
Yes.
That courthouse is tiny.
It's tiny. It's
so tiny. That witness chair is so close to the jury.
It's so hard.
It's just that narrow door frame in between. Like, you know, the witness, you could have reached out and touched these people.
Right.
And the chairs, like, they didn't even have cushions, if I remember correct.
No.
Little wooden chairs.
Did you go in the jury room? Because the jury room, I want you to imagine 18 people in that room when it first started.
No, I didn't go in the jury room, but I came in the back way. I was in where they would keep Alex.
Mm-hmm.
But, and where Dick would come down, and the bailiffs were super nice, and they were telling me some stuff. And they said even when it came to that, like, there's an area designated for attorneys to visit their clients, and they're supposed to go back behind this glass wall. That's the way it is. That's the rules. But Dick didn't even want to go by that. He fought to be able to stand in the middle of the room with Alex, even though that's not the policy. You know, even little things like that. He doesn't want to follow the rules. And here is Alex.
Want to do that for privacy reasons or something? Like,
to me,
that's more unprivate, not private than the rest. Than the
rooms are set up to offer them privacy, but no, he wanted to be seen. I think just to break the rule, because it didn't make sense to stand in the middle of a room surrounded by people, or to go sit down, you know, and have a civilized. I think it was just like some people just want to break the rules, you know. I just don't understand it. But no, I didn't see the jury room, but everything in that place was tiny. So I believe you when you said that was tiny.
Yeah. I mean, we had the other room, and that's where some of us split up. Like I said, there were a few guys that went in that room first, but I know there were so many conversations going on. It would get really loud sometimes. And I just, one day when I came in, I headed straight for that room, and I stayed in there ever since, because it was quieter. Wasn't as many people in there, and you know, and the bathrooms were really nice bathrooms. They were really big. So, you know, but it was just a lot. To be stuck there, and all you could do was walk to the window and look out the window. Because if you weren't a smoker, you didn't go outside. You know, you didn't go out. So it was like it was a lot.
Yeah, I bet. You also mentioned how realizing that Alex was willing to mislead the police in their search for the killer, that was one of the reasons that you realized he was guilty. And I think people have let that thought just like slip out of their minds.
Right. Because
when you think of people who've had loved ones murdered and they don't know who did it, they're obsessed. Like upset. I know I would be. They want justice. They want to find who did it, why they did it, you know, how they did it, all the questions. And it's so strange to me that even that same summer of the murders, Alex and Buster were just living their lives. They were at parties, they
Yeah.
were doing all the normal things. And I think of people like John Walsh. Do you know who John Walsh is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so look at the career this man built
Mm-hmm.
on the heartbreak of his son how many decades ago?
Mm.
And he's still
Yeah.
still in his old age, fighting. His There's nothing he can do for his son, so he's trying to fight for other people. Or
Right.
like Amber Hagerman's family with the Amber Alert, because
Yes.
if people get obsessed, they want to know who killed their loved one and they want justice. So
Yes.
to just like, you know, it, if I thought that someone had wandered on my home and killed my mother and literally blew my brother's brains out, I couldn't be just out and about. I would be fearful. If I didn't know who did it or why they did it,
Right.
because that would mean that I was a target.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make any sense. It's like strangers aren't going to wander up on that property in pitch black dark, use family guns. Mark Tinsley had a great quote that I don't think I ever got to use about how it just wasn't probable.
Right. And
yeah,
That all
so
these things happen that you'd have to believe them. It's like you
you have,
can't.
yeah. And
right,
so what stood out to me is when we listened to the 911 call. Now, when you call 911, their job is to get you help, right? You're calling because you need help. And
right,
they're trying to get the information that they need to get the help to you quickly. They
yes,
don't ask the questions. Who do you think did it? Why do you think that they don't ask these questions because they're trying
right,
to get you help? So now, how is it that you have walked up on this horrific scene? And first of all, I don't even know if I would be able to call 911. If
right.
they wouldn't be able to understand anything that I'm saying.
Yes,
I would be covered in blood, and because
absolutely.
my child, most of all, would have been in my arms. I mean, they would have had to rip me away from it. So how
Absolutely.
is it that you have the presence of mind to give the 911 caller a suspects, and
First words out of your mouth.
motive? You have it made no sense to me. And then when that was the first thing that stood out to me. Then when the first officer arrived, you automatically he didn't even ask. You automatically give him the same information. You give him a suspect or suspects
Mhm.
and a motive. You tell him these are my tire tracks. I came in through this way. These are not my tire tracks. You're pointing out all these things.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how do you have to? And then you keep asking, are they dead? Now
Yes.
said that you said that you checked them. You didn't even have to touch them because just looking at them, especially Paul, his brain was right there.
Right.
You knew he was dead. It was a little over dramatic.
It was. And it was like he was wanting them to say it. It can somebody check them? Is it official that they're dead?
It's official they're dead, right? It's like
Yeah, he kept wanting to make sure they're they're not going to wake up and say, "Oh, he shot me." He wanted them dead.
This was not the reaction of a man
No.
who is distraught that his family is. I mean, I didn't see any water. I'm just looking and I'm going, this makes no sense. I'm like, what is happening? Because something isn't right. And then you watch all the interviews and the trucks and nothing. I'm like, this is no.
Mm-mm.
This is all an act. He was a very bad actor. Very bad actor.
Yes. Yes.
He just
go ahead.
He just went overboard. He didn't realize you're going overboard.
Right.
You don't watch enough TV because you're going overboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he needs to watch CSI. Right?
Seriously.
Yeah.
But yeah, the same thing about the clothes being clean. You would grab your baby, and cradle him. Your wife, if you loved her, the same thing. And because your brain does not accept death that quickly.
Does not.
Your brain still thinks, oh,
You're
we
like
can get some help.
bargaining and going through those stages.
Exactly, bargaining, all of these steps. You don't just walk up and go, oh, they're dead. Your brain cannot process it that quickly. You still, beyond hope, beyond any reason, you think it can be okay somehow. It was a very strange reaction, and
Right.
not a drop of blood on his clothes. It was
But
very
he said he said he checked them. He
right.
said he tried to turn Paul over, which means you should have had some blood on you somewhere. That
Yes.
was a messy, messy scene. There should have been blood on you somewhere. Shoes, pants, something.
And I was rewatching the interviews, and he says it that night, and then he says it again later in the when the police are interviewing him again, and he says, I tried to, because he wants to explain why Paul's phone is on his butt.
Yeah.
But there's no good reason, because he knows that he checked Paul's phone.
Yes.
And he doesn't know how to give a reason.
Yeah,
how to explain it. So he says, and he never finishes the sentence, because I think halfway through he realizes it doesn't make sense. He's like, I went to turn him over, thinking maybe, and then he stops. And he does, thinking maybe what?
Thinking maybe another time he tried to turn him over by a belt loop or something.
Yeah,
by his belt loop.
It doesn't even make sense.
And it kills me watching the interview, because I'm thinking, why didn't they ask him to finish his sentence?
Yeah, they should have.
If I were interviewing him, I would have said, thinking maybe what?
Yeah.
What? Go on, because my mind needs to know what were you thinking that you were going to do, other than you're just trying to give some reason why you handled Paul's phone and put it on his butt like he was just a log or something laying there.
Right. Well, Roro was texting him. And he saw that Roro texted him, but he couldn't text. So he's trying to figure out, and he saw how many there were, and he's trying to figure out what was happening. So he had no idea what was on that phone, and that was another kink in the chain. When you try to plan these perfect things, they don't come out like that. I mean, his night just did not go well at all.
Nope,
it did not go the way he planned.
I always thought, because he might not even have known what Paul was doing, on the phone. He might have thought, Paul was live with someone, or somebody heard something. I think that's what happened. I think when he came back, he got scared.
He did not know that he was videotaped. He had no idea.
Right.
No.
And Alex sounded mad when he was chastising Bubba. And I know that they brought it up like
they were having some happy family moment.
Yeah, exactly.
He was mad.
They were not having.
Yeah, he was mad.
No, and
he was aggravated.
We have to remember that he lowered them there. Okay, Maggie, Blanca, and her sister, both corroborated that he wanted her to come back to the house, and then he wanted Paul to come back to replant the sunflowers. I mean, he lured them there.
Yeah. I mean, what a weird time to worry about the sunflowers. Paul's grandpa's in the hospital, about to die. And the other part that never made sense to me, and there wasn't a whole lot said about it, the whole reason for Maggie coming back was supposedly to go see his dad.
Exactly.
Why did he go alone then? What happened? The whole reason she came home to Moselle from Edisto was to go see him. But then Alex went by himself. Well, so why was she there? She could have been happily sleeping in Edisto, not dead.
Right. Well, remember that all fell apart because, he was there when he said he wasn't there, and he was taking a nap, and he woke up and decided to go see Dad and Mom and tried to call her. That all fell apart when he admitted, when the videos proved that he was there, and then he admitted that he was there. And not only that, I mean, every one of his family members and co-workers and everybody identified that was him.
Yep.
And you could tell it was him. I mean, we know his voice. We knew his voice then enough to know that that was definitely him on the video.
Mm-hmm.
So
was it weird the first time you heard it?
I was like, what? And I'm thinking to myself, man, he was there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had already had doubt. I mean, because of the 911 call, just the different things that happened, I was like, I don't know how all of this came to be, but he something is not right. He had to be there. He did, you know. And so when the video played, it was like, oh yeah, there's no way you left there and somebody waited until you left to kill them and you didn't hear anything.
And why?
Why?
And what about all of that elaborate thing about a cat maybe coming when he was trying to talk about that he thought he heard them, but maybe it was a cat, and just way too many rando details.
Yeah, and none of them made sense.
None of them made sense.
Thank you for watching part 2 of our chat. Please keep your eye out for part 3 coming soon. Till then, this is Cassidy O'Connell saying stay well and stay tuned.